Hi friends, I just wanted to say something before we start the episode. You'll hear some minor audio issues and some references to this being the first episode of the podcast because it was recorded first, and that was the original intent. However, the horrific attacks on Minnesota State Representative Melissa Hortman and Minnesota Senator John Hoffman occurred right before this episode's release, prompting me to delay it out of respect. I hope one day this topic is not as relevant as it continues to be, but for now, here's our discussion of assassins. Welcome to The Little Things You Hear Together, the podcast that dives deep into Broadway cast albums to figure out how they work, what they reveal, and why some of them claim a bigger piece of our collective brains than others. My first guest today is my very good friend, Josh Swantz. Welcome to the podcast, Josh.
Hi, thanks for having me.
This is your fault, so this is why you have to be the guinea pig on this first episode.
I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy that you're going on this journey.
Thank you. So, what is your overall relationship to music theater and how it has been a part of your life?
I have listened to music theater since I was a wee little baby, growing up with records, actual vinyl records, in the living room at my parents' house. There was the West Side Story album and a whole host of others. I vividly remember watching musicals with my mother in particular, but also my dad. And then throughout the course of school, was in a couple of shows, then a couple more. Did a few in college, a little bit of theater afterwards, but it's a place that I always like to go back to because it is a good way to explore different perspectives, different places, different ideas. And I love storytelling in music, and it just feels like a natural fit.
Absolutely. I totally resonate with all of that. I think the power of musical theater is the stories that it can tell, especially the different kinds of stories from different backgrounds, different points of view. So that is why I'm glad to be starting this podcast, to have opportunities to talk about those stories. All right, so what show are we talking about for this inaugural episode?
We're talking about Stephen Sondheim's Assassins from the 2004 season?
Yes, the 2003-2004 Tony Award season. The music and lyrics are by Stephen Sondheim. The book is by John Weidman. It is a controversial piece for some, but very much a weird, beloved show by many, including the two of us.
It is arguably my favorite Sondheim show.
And it's hard to argue with that. It's a very good show. So do you have any general thoughts on the album or the show itself before we dive in a little bit deeper?
All right, I'm going to take those as two separate questions because I think they are. In terms of the album by itself, I listened to this album originally before having seen the show or knowing the show. And so I have very vivid memories of I had this idea of what the thing was, and then driving in a car, listening to the CD, and just constantly stopping and going, wait, what? Oh. And I feel that that's something that you get from great shows where they make you pause and think and you're diving in a little bit deeper. In terms of the show more broadly, I've seen it fewer than 5, more than 2 times. So I'm familiar with a few different stagings and a few different interpretations of it. It's a show that I would love to do, but I don't think I would ever get cast in, and I'm okay with that.
I think you would make a wonderful Emma Goldman.
I mean, she has ideas that are near and dear to my heart.
Yes. So I think I first came to Assassins through getting cast albums from the library, and it was shortly after this would have come out as an album, and so the library had it. And I didn't quite know what I was listening to, but I thought it was weird and cool. I didn't latch on as much until later, but I would keep coming back to it every once in a while. And I have now, I think, only seen one live production of it, which was not the best, but it was good to see and support live local theater.
Big swings.
Yep. And I have seen a few different videos of professional versions online that are nice to get an idea of the different ideas of how it has been approached. This is a show that is, for most people, more well-known than some of the others in this Broadway season. And that is partially because there have been several different iterations of it. The original off-Broadway production in 1991
With Victor Garber.
Yes. It had a big following that then was made even bigger by this revival on Broadway. It then had an Encores production in 2017 and then an off-Broadway revival with Classic Stage Theater in 2021. So there are different cast albums out there. There are different ideas of the roles that people have explored over the years. So we will dive into some of that throughout this episode. It's just kind of hard not to when there's so many different ways that we've heard these songs, and the natural inclination is to compare what works for you in one versus the other.
And I think one of the other oddities in this one is the fact that it does have a song that gets covered outside of the music theater realm or in a review realm semi-regularly in terms of Unworthy of Your Love, which, again, completely out of context, can seem totally cool and normal.
Most of the lyrics can.
Yeah, in most of it.
So the Broadway production in 2004 had quite the cast.
Yes.
I mean, we have Neil Patrick Harris making his, I believe, return to major public
prominence.
work. Yeah, he'd had a role on Harold and Kumar, one of the movies before this, I think.
He was in both.
He was in both. But then I think this is his first theater work as an adult. I don't know if he did much when he was younger.
Because I watched him as Doogie Howser, I know some of the things that he has done. I believe he was in a regional production of Rent before this as Mark. But yeah, he had done theater for an extended period of time before this, but I had not known that particularly well before listening to this album. And I was very pleasantly surprised because he was dreamy Doogie Howser when I was a kid. Yes. And he's still dreamy NPH.
He is still dreamy. I think from what I can gather, he was somewhat viewed as stunt casting at the time, where people thought, oh, he's a name from the 80s, but what do we know of him other than that? Why are they putting him in this major role in this revival? And I think he did a very good job in this revival and then has since done much more good work that has proved that it was not just stunt casting. He actually was bringing a lot to the role and was a good choice.
Yes, and I think it also catapulted him into one of my favorite roles, which was multiple-time Tony host, and I would love for him to come back and do it again.
Absolutely.
No shade against anybody else, but he's just chef's kiss.
Every time. So good. In this show, though, we also have Michael Cerveris, repeat Sondheim offender, who we love.
Indeed.
Mark Kudish, who has been known for many different kinds of productions. Also in this cast, we have Alexander Gemignani, son of renowned musical conductor Paul Gemignani. Mm-hmm. And I believe this is also a fairly early role for him.
I believe that is correct.
He'd go on to do a lot more before he moved more into following his father's footsteps as a musical director. I'm not sure how much he's been acting lately, but he's still definitely very active in the scene. Dennis O'Hare, who is one of my favorites in this. He is so funny, and having seen him on stage now in Here We Are, he just has amazing comedic timing that is perfect for the role he plays in this show.
And because we are talking about the cast album, I have to call out early the fact that his voice acting is amazing, and the way that he's able to convey so much without, the physical mannerisms that come with it. You can tell what they are just through his voice.
You can see his face. You can see his hands, exactly. And this was the first recording of Assassins that I ever listened to. And so every other version, I've just been disappointed that it's not Dennis O'Hare on the recording.
Big shoes. Big shoes.
And obviously there are many other amazing actors in this show, and will talk about them more as we go through the songs. But I think we might as well just get into the different tracks on the album.
Yes, I will bring up certain cast members throughout the course. But...
Yes, absolutely. So we start off with Everybody's Got the Right. We open with a slow waltz version of Hail to the Chief, kind of eerie, setting the tone for the show as political, off kilter a little bit, not quite sure what you're going to get. And then we kind of start into this weird nowhere land that, in this production at least, definitely a big carnival as the setting.
And I will say it grabbed me really early because of the fact that it had odd orchestration, which is a thing that I love, and like kind of sparse, but still evokes something. Like it makes you feel these were all chosen for a reason. So like that immediately jumps for me. And also weird carnival stuff is an in for me. So
Michael Starobin orchestrated both the original production and this expanded orchestra for the Broadway revival. And the carnival element is less literal in the Broadway version, but it's almost too much in the original for me. And I like that we definitely get that sense of it, but it's not so cloying as that.
It allows you as a listener to do more of the imagination as opposed to here is a hard set as to exactly where you are and what has happened.
Yeah. So part of the interesting bit of trying to get a handle on this show from listening to the cast album alone, as we both did before ever seeing it, is it centers around this Twilight Zone type of environment where time isn't a thing. People from all different eras of history can commingle and interact. and it's sort of real in how it affects them in the real world, some sort of just completely separate. And that is very interesting on stage, but it's very confusing trying to get that just from the audio of these people talking together.
Yes. One of the other things that I will say, and this might just be a me thing, is some in this cast album, there are two voice actors who, particularly their spoken voice, has like a weird tonal overlap for me. So it is difficult to parse out who is who, at least at times. And especially when I was listening the first time. And that's Michael and Mark. Like there's a timbre to their voice that it is sweet and lovely, but it is similar enough that it was difficult for me in the first couple of songs to tell who was who. And then later on, when Booth starts coming in and interacting with more of the other assassins, there was a strange overlap in kind of the role and responsibility also, I felt. So I found myself the first listen having a difficult time tracking who was who.
Yeah, for sure. So we have some intro, whatever, just kind of setting the mood, and then a jarring shift in both the type of music and the lyrics to "Come Here and Kill a President." So I love a show that will jolt an audience into, oh, this is what we're going to be listening to and seeing for the night. Okay, great. Because if you don't have that set up right from the beginning, you're going to possibly confuse people even more. But also, if they spend so long trying to understand what the vibe of the show is, it's going to distract them from paying attention to what's going on, which is never helpful.
I will agree with that 100%.
And then we get into "Everybody's Got the Right to Be Happy" as the general theme of this song. And it is a strangely perverted view on that, because it's not the right to pursue happiness, it's the right to be happy. And therefore, if you're not, the next step is that must be somebody else's fault for keeping you unhappy, which leads to people doing all sorts of weird actions to get what they think they deserve and what they think is right.
Yeah, and I think that this song in particular sets up the theme and the level of discomfort for a number of the audience members and, some of the reviewers more broadly, but in a wonderful way, because it does force you into that uncomfortable space of, is this right? Am I supposed to be thinking this way? Because it makes sense and they're framing this as a good thing. And so I really dig that. And
yeah, and it's very happy and peppy music to distract you from the words to some degree, which Sondheim does well in many shows, where if you actually pay attention, you're like, oh no, this is actually a bit more horrifying than the happy tune would indicate. We do set up in this song the relationship of the male characters, especially the proprietor, with the two female assassins, who, how they interact with everybody else in the show is one of the points of contention, I think, of does the show accomplish everything it is intending to do? Because they are very dismissive toward both Sarah Jane Moore and Squeaky Fromm. And I can tell that it's trying to be satirizing that, but it doesn't quite feel to me that it goes far enough to make it clear that this is not just how the show views the women, but it's how the characters view the women. And that it is a tough line to walk, but it sometimes is a little uncomfortable, especially watching it, to see how rude and sexist they are being.
yeah, there are times where I had thought that part of the reason for the dismissal of them was because of their lack of follow through or completion on their tasks. And some of that ties in with like Hinckley and, the fact that he also failed and how they treat him. But I also feel that it's different and there is a distinct level of misogyny that's being pushed on them.
Yeah, even if it's not what's intended, that's what comes across because there's only two of them. Hinckley, at least, he's one of the many male characters. And so it does not read the same way because not every male character is being treated that way. And so it's definitely unique to him and his situation versus both of the females being similar enough in trying to kill the same president and both failing. They're going to get lumped together naturally, but that makes it even more dangerous to get into painting a broad brush that reads as even broader.
Yeah, I think also there is a little less, maybe on the Squeaky side of it, only because she also then gets lumped in with John. And, you've got her paired with John for Unworthy of Your Love. Then you've got her paired with Sarah for not a song, but a wonderful scene that we don't actually get to see on this album, but wonderful exchanges.
I would never, ever advocate for bootlegs, but since they exist, I definitely recommend going to check out that scene. Well, the whole book, really, John Weidman's book for this show is phenomenal, and we do get snatches of it here and there from a little bit of dialogue that's included, but I definitely recommend reading the show, if you can get your hands on a copy of the libretto, or watching a video online. The book scenes are top-notch.
And if there's ever a local production that is being done, go and support the art.
Yes, absolutely, always. So I do want to pull attention to one specific lyric that I find so well done. I mean, it's Sondheim, go figure. But
everybody's got the right to some sunshine. Everybody, not the sun, but maybe one of his beams.
I love that they start off with everybody's got the sunshine that they deserve. Well, not the whole sun, you just get a little bit of the sunshine, like very clarifying, not the sun, which is sort of attempting to temper expectations, but not quite. I just think it's very, very nice wordplay that evokes a good image.
Yeah, and it also tempers a little bit the point you made earlier about the right to be happy versus the right to pursue happiness. In theory, being happy is having the entire sunshine, but pursuing happiness is just getting one of the beams so that you can, go after it. And so there is that settle for what it is that you can get that will make you happy, or at least what it is that you can attain.
Yeah.
And that is something that I think is important as a realist, even if it's not necessarily what you want to hear.
Right. So next up, we go into the Ballad of Booth.
Doesn't stop the story. Story's pretty strong. Doesn't change the song.
This is a song that is getting our first bit of dialogue that is included. On this album, it is a lot of the scene where Booth is in the barn with his compatriot after shooting Lincoln. What are your thoughts on the amount of the book scene that's included?
I'm going to answer this in two ways. Listening to it the first time, I thought it was too much. Listening to other albums and having seen the show now, I think this is the right amount. Because I think most of the other albums, usually this scene clocks in, or this track clocks in somewhere around 10 minutes, and that's 2 minutes too long.
Yes, it is 8 minutes and 34 seconds on this album. It is 9 minutes and 22 seconds on the original off-Broadway cast. And it is 9 minutes and 57 seconds on the off-Broadway revival. So this is the shorter version of it, but I think it does a good job of setting up why we care about the lyrics that come after the book scene.
Very much. Like I said, the first time that I listened to it, I was pulled out a little bit because I didn't know the show. I didn't know what was going on. And I was like, just get me to the songs. That's what I was here for. And now, having lived with the album, I think that it is a very good amount. It gives you enough context. It also lets you, if you're not a weirdo, but if you're someone like me who enjoys singing along and like imagining that you're in a particular role, it is enough of the book scene to help you get into the headspace so that way you can emote in a good way or at a good level for the rest of the song. And so that is something that I very much like and appreciate about this. I still think that the others are too long, and so I will 100% settle for this as being a good amount of the book.
Yeah, it's obviously a personal preference issue, not a hard and fast rule of this is the right amount to include. And who knows, maybe there'd be a version that would have less than this that I would then say, oh, this still feels like it gets across what you need. But of the versions that we have out there, I do think this is the best, because the little extra bits you get from those longer versions don't add enough to be worth what you have to sit through as far as time. And because space on an album is limited, if you include more of this scene here, that's less of what you can include from other things later in the show. So in this scene, we have the controversial use of a racial slur to describe Lincoln as a person who valued the lives of Black individuals and freed the slaves. And a lot of people do not like that there's a racial slur used in the song. But the other argument is that it is necessary to convey exactly what the sentiment was and why the character is the way that he is.
I am in the second camp. Is that a word that I think should be said in general parlance by someone like me? No, it is not. However, in the context of a show and in the context of something that is trying to be, I don't want to say historically accurate, but historically representative,
I like that.
I think that is important. It does a good job of making you feel and taking you to that place, so that way you can, again, contend with your feelings. If they go through and they tone everything down and they make it all bland, it's not as impactful or meaningful. It's the Disneyfication of history. It's the Disneyfication of every one of Grimm's fairy tales. You still need to have that uncomfortableness and that bite in there, but you can't. It's like a PG-13 show. You get one F-bomb in the show. You get this one in the album, and it has to be impactful. Otherwise, if it's everywhere, it does not matter and it does not mean anything, and therefore it's just there for shock value or, gratuity.
Well, I will say that I think it is there for shock value, but to the point of taking the audience on the correct journey, because a big part of the themes of this show is trying to understand the rationale for why these individuals did what they did and why they might have thought that it was the right thing to do. And to varying degrees, how much can you follow their logic versus it's just batshit out there. So in this kind of partly sung, partly spoken monologue of Booth's, he's listing a lot of very rational grievances with Lincoln. He's talking about, perspective on who's at fault for the Civil War. And he's making points in a way that you can start to think, okay, I don't agree with him, but I
understand.
I can connect the points the same way that he is. And then it kind of leans more into ideological things that sound good. And then to then get slammed out of it by that huge reminder of, oh no, this is all about him wanting to support slavery. All of the rest of that is justification that he's built up in his mind, but that is not actually what he cares about. It is that bad. He is as bad as I thought before the song started. And it is a good way to get the audience to realize how easy it is to start to be complicit in going along with things and not thinking that critically about them yourself. And in a musical, it's moving quickly. You can't. If you're trying to listen to what's going on, you can't analyze it that much in the same
the same way.
time.
Yeah.
And so it's I think a brilliant way to force that. And then afterwards, when you're thinking about it, you're like, oh yeah, I did get suckered in here and then brought out of it by this line.
And it's a great way to pull out and counter the initial everyone's got the right. Because as I had said at the beginning, the happiness of everyone's got the right to be happy, it does make you think that, these are the heroes, these are the protagonists, we like them. No, we don't. No, this is still bad.
And I think that's why this show has had the legacy that it has, because it is not going easy on just making them villains and two-dimensional characters that, yes, we all agree that they were bad. That's not interesting. It's seeing how they viewed themselves potentially, or how someone like them could view themselves, and how susceptible we all might be to getting into a trap like that and becoming the villain without realizing it, because it seems totally logical in our own heads. And I think that is anything that's dealing with villains, that should be, if you're not going to just do a cartoon camp version of a villain, it should be understanding how they got there, not to excuse them, but to be a cautionary tale that we are all susceptible to going down a dark path for things that seem correct but are not.
Yes, the cautionary tale aspect, 100%, because they just had a bad day, or they're really the victim themselves, is something that, going back to Disney, please do not sue me, that they have done to a degree with some of their villains, like Maleficent, and probably with Scar next, where, sometimes people are bad, or sometimes they are persuaded by events to do bad things that they should have known better.
Yeah.
And
so that will be a continuing theme throughout the show, but I think starting the first Assassin's song being Booth and having that moment in it is a good way to, again, prime the audience for what's going to come next. And it is interesting through the first song into this. The show is set up, it's not going chronologically in time. There's not necessarily a through line of a story. It's more of a conceptual theme-based musical, but we do sort of get the idea pushed that Booth was the leader of this movement to use political assassination as a way to right wrongs or correct grievances. We get the line, "How could you do it, Johnny?" calling it a cause. And so it's not clear, I don't think, to what degree anybody following him actually viewed him as a pioneer, but that is the take that we are using to tell this story and kind of keep it all somewhat coherent, since he will be the instigator for many other assassins as we go. I think I like it that it's not an important plot line. It's not even a plot line, but it's just a device to keep it from being too conceptual and keep it a little bit easier for an audience to engage with.
Yeah, I think a piece with that as well is the fact that we're not hitting all of the attempted assassinations of different presidents, and we have established in the previous song who it is that our players are, who the presidents are that were impacted. There were other people who had assassination attempts on them, but this is the story that we're choosing to tell, and this is a good place to start, especially since arguably he's probably the best known
Yeah.
or one of the two best known that the general populace would be able to latch onto.
Yeah. Again, another line that I love so much is,
But traitors just get jeers and boos, not visits to their graves. While Lincoln, who got mixed reviews because of you, John, now gets only raves.
it's kind of a weird take on the victors tell the history idea, where the reality that persists is based on perception. And, usually it's about whoever is telling the stories, they're the ones that were in the place of power to tell the stories that they wanted to. But in this case, it's because you created a martyr, now that's all anybody's going to remember, not the bad things that he did. And so you had the opposite effect that you wanted by venerating him instead of demonizing him.
Yeah, when you end up attacking someone or turning them into a victim, that sounds bad. But when you have attacked someone else, people will sympathize with that individual and they will forget about the other things that they have done. And so it immediately pivots it into a two-camp situation where you are either on one person's side or the other person's side. And when someone has passed away, that is usually the side that you are going to latch onto.
And that's the truth. Still and all. Damn you, Booth!
All right. So next we get a book scene, an abbreviated form of a book scene. The actual scene starts with other stuff going on, and then we get this little toast from Dennis O'Hare as Guiteau, which, again, we already set it up that this would be a theme. Dennis O'Hare is phenomenal in giving layers and notes within this little monologue. And the fact that he can be so comical but so menacing at the same time is a major standout in his portrayal of this character, I think.
Ladies and gentlemen, what can I say? Hail to the chief!
I very much agree. And he is a great palate cleanser here on the album, because you just came from something that was very heavy and dark and shocking, as we've discussed, and now you are into a completely different space, and you know that what is going to come next is going to be different than what was before.
Absolutely. From there, we move kind of right into How I Saved Roosevelt, which is a pastiche song.
Mm-hmm.
It is a fictionalized version of the true story of 5 bystanders who all claimed to have contributed to saving Franklin Delano Roosevelt's life during his assassination attempt. And they were all clamoring for the media attention to get their due praise for how valiantly they acted. And the way that it is accomplished in this song, I think, is one, just incredibly entertaining, but so artfully done, to be using primarily El Capitan, the Sousa March that was playing at the rally, actually, as the basis for the music during the sections that are about the bystanders.
Yep. And then there's a second march too, the Post, right?
Yep, the Washington Post March is then used for smaller bits of,
Yeah.
not truly a bridge section, but kind of sort of like that.
Yeah. I'm going to jump in here to call out the ensemble, because the Americans, the 5 individuals who are being represented here, the ensemble cast is amazing in this, and I cannot give them enough props. They are all funny, well, sometimes heartfelt. They are memorable. I will periodically just yell, Harold, for no reason.
Absolutely.
It's an amazing delivery. I love it.
Yeah, and this is their first chance to shine in the show, because up to now it's been primarily just the principals. We had, what's his name, the accomplice of Booth, who doesn't have, his name isn't even mentioned in the show. It's just in the program that he has a name, so I don't remember it. But we now have the song that is, most of the song is just the ensemble, interspersed then with bits of Zangara. In a very different style, we go to an Italian tarantella, because he was Italian. And so that's a good contrast. And he's very dark and brooding. They're happy, bubbly, oblivious to the world. And I just think you get such a sense of the energy that the characterization of these people is that so, grandiose and I'm so amazing. Come pay attention to me and thank me for my service. But still being Star Trek, like, oh, are you a reporter? And just of the different recordings, this ensemble does by far, in my opinion, the best of bringing to life what other productions might kind of write off as not that important.
Lucky I was there. That's why he was standing back so far.
That's why when he aimed, he missed the car.
Just lucky I was there, or we'd have been left bereft of FDR.
They make it important by doing it so well.
Yeah, they are not just a stereotype. They are, I want to say, the stereotype, because they are so emblematic and indicative of what that person seeking 15 minutes of fame is. And they were all fantastic. And I just wanted to make sure that this will be at least the first, if not the last, time that I talk about the ensemble, because they are great.
Well, based on the other songs to come, it will not be the last.
True.
But I also do want to bring attention to the line that just gets me every time. It's not that crazy, but we'd have been left bereft of FDR. It is so simple, but again, it's a Sondheim show. I have to marvel at the lyrics. And so here we are again.
Like the little internal rhymes and just the consonants that they choose to sit with are great.
Absolutely. Along with, and to think that we might have missed seeing him miss is another small line, but it makes me laugh.
This show, most Sondheim shows generally, but this show, it has so many of those little lyrics in there that like each time that you listen to it again, you find a new thing that can be your favorite. It makes me think of my favorite movie, which is 1985's Clue, and also has all of these jokes and these one-off lines that even to this day, I will find a new different one that might be my favorite. And the writing in this is wonderful.
Absolutely. Not that we're biased about Sondheim or anything.
Yeah, I realize that I've been gushing over this a lot. Let's find something that I can critique.
Okay. So at the end of How I Saved Roosevelt, we have Zangara in the electric chair singing about how there are no photographers and he's not getting his chance at fame, which is a thing he actually said. And it is hilarious to then contrast that with the bystanders who are also wanting their moment of fame. But then he is singing at the same time as them. And it is intentionally written, per Sondheim in the MTI guiding video that was recorded, that he ends on a high note so that it is shrill and disturbing as the electric chair starts to electrocute him. And in this recording, we don't really get that. And that's a bummer for me, because other recordings, you can hear that note better, but the mix on this is not such that you really can tell unless you're listening for it. And even then, it's hard to hear his note.
No lights! I was there! I'm on the front page, is that bizarre?
And all of those pictures right to start.
Just lucky I was there! We might have been left, who care after that? Pull the switch, no gear!
Yeah, see, we have reached the critique phase. We will not just gush all of the time. I agree. It does not match the intent of what was written and what was instructed. I don't hate it. Because I think the intent from the orchestrator or the director on this is just like big giant wall of sound, and the slight overtones that are coming in from the electricity or the slight crackle that's coming in gives you that good, like, here's the crunch. But it does definitely lose the intent with that high A, I think it is.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, as a listener, you don't miss it. And I did not realize that that was a thing for a very long time. But since this podcast is about evaluating not just the enjoyment of cast albums, but their production and the different elements that go into listening to a cast album, it is a bit of a missed opportunity, because it really wouldn't take very much at all to just slightly turn up his note or slightly turn down the others or slightly decrease the sound effect of the electricity for that to come through just a little bit better. It wouldn't have to be a very dramatic shift at all. And I don't know, you can't really tell from the bootleg how well it comes through, because sound on videos from this time period are not great.
That's fair.
So I don't know how well it played in the theater. Maybe it was more of a directorial choice to de-emphasize that note, but I think it was an opportunity for the cast album to go above and beyond that they missed. So not as much of a deficit as you could have been even better and you didn't. So next we go into your number, or your dialogue of What Would a Man Do by Emma Goldman. So it's pretty brief. It does provide a break from How I Saved Roosevelt before it, and it sort of sets up the gun song that's about to come after. But there's not a whole lot in the scene.
I was so confused by it. I'm not gonna lie. The first time that I listened to it, I love her voice. I love the acting choices that she had. I love the kind of the atmospheric quality that is used, as well as the kind of reverb and the echo effect that ends up getting put on the end.
What does he do? What does he do? What does he do?
But it made me expect that there was something different that was going to come next. And I was a little bummed by that. And this is unfortunately a scene that, like, if I'm listening to the album, I will periodically just skip to the next because I don't need it if I've got my phone handy and I can just, tap.
Yeah, this used to be an always skip for me. And then once I saw a version of the show, I at least appreciate it now, so I'm more likely to let it play because I understand the context that it is coming from. But to your point, without that context, it's not much of anything.
Yeah.
And so I think its probably main purpose is just to have a little bit of space between the song before and the song after, which is fine.
Yeah. It's a good, it can give some good context for what's coming next in terms of how Czolgosz's mind is and kind of where some of his motivations came from. But yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. So the next song then is the gun song, which is the primary vocal moment for Leon Czolgosz. He does not sing in the song that is named after him. He starts off talking about how violent a gun is, not just in its use, but in its production. Because at the time, the factories and the mines and all of the stages of getting the materials and assembling them into a gun was incredibly dangerous.
OSHA did not exist.
No, it did not. And so it's kind of a step back from what we've been talking about and thinking about in the show so far to just kind of reflect on American gun culture, which was a thing back in 1991, but it's only gotten more of an issue lately.
Yep.
But it's a point of view that we don't think about so much now because the production side of things is much safer, thanks to unions and health standards. But to what degree does that then make it even more noticeable how violent it is in its intended use?
Yeah, because it's now in this song, there is a discussion on how many lives a gun consumes in its creation, post-creation, in the fight to get it potentially away from someone. If you're only a good guy with a gun can take down a bad guy with a gun, what's the collateral damage that goes with that too? Like it hits on a lot of those different things. And I think that from the start on how it is that Czolgosz comes in and starts kind of discussing it, it does make you think about that a lot. And I think also that people who may not have or know that context from a factory standpoint, they may just think, oh yeah, no, throughout the course of a gun's lifetime, once it's made, it's going to take out a lot of people and not really go deep.
Yeah. So I think it is very well explicitly stated, a gun kills many men before it's done, long before you shoot the gun. To hopefully not let you get by without thinking about that part of it. But, the mind might wander for a quick second and miss that. Who knows? But then we have quite a tonal shift when Guiteau comes in. And again, every other cast album is ruined for me because of Dennis O'Hare being so good. He is in love with his gun. He is playing with it like a new toy. And he is so happy.
Playing with it like a new toy, which you should not do.
No, you should not
treat guns like toys. But he is brilliant.
And so it's a great moment. So we have a little bit of time, we breathe because we were just in a very tense bit of the song. And then now he's just joking around. And then very quickly into his fun little moment.
More tension.
What a Wonder is a Gun. Click. And then a long bit of silence, which I think is very well done with the sound effect, the sound design of the album, that you can get a sense of what's actually happening logically. It may not be completely correct. But in the show, he is pointing his gun at as many individual audience members as possible to make them super uncomfortable.
What a wonder is a gun. What a versatile invention. First of all, when you've a gun.
Everybody pays attention.
And it goes on for a lot longer in the show than it does on the album. And I think it's also well chosen how long to have it last on the album.
Yes. When I listened to the album the first time, I knew that that's what they were going for. I didn't know that it was we're pointing at multiple individuals, but I could tell that it was we have a cocked gun now on stage that is likely facing the audience, if not broadly, a specific audience member.
And no matter what, it is creating tension. You feel that 100% on the album.
And the other thing, because I try and sing along with this every time because I love it so much, and I still can't quite get the timing down consistently, which is the other thing that I love about this, because it is out of time.
Yeah.
There is no solid count pattern that I've found, at least, to make you like have a definite rhythm for when things are going to come back in, which does keep that tension live.
And it gives the actor playing that role time to milk it as long as they feel they still have the audience in the palm of their hand.
Mm-hmm.
Because the song restarts with them singing, and then the orchestra will follow. So they can take however long they want, and maybe the director will be like, come on, let's get back to it. But it can last as long as they feel it's being effective, which is also a cool moment for an actor to have that power.
Yeah, because so often we're tied to that monitor.
Yes. But then we come back in and he's gone from the serious expression back to lovingly just having a blast with his gun. And so that whiplash back and forth, you're like, I'm happy, I'm enjoying it, but I'm so stressed right now. And that's completely the intention of the vibe. And it's just so well written and then well executed on this album.
And it helps to support Czolgosz's original statements.
Yeah, because he's clearly not being that careful with his gun. So who knows what he's going to do with it. And then we get to the next character to enter. Well, I think at this point, Booth has kind of come in the background and is singing here and there. All you have to do is move your little finger.
Yeah. Again, this is where I had a level of confusion the first little bit that I was listening on. Is this the proprietor? Is this Czolgosz? Is this Booth? Again, first time listening through, being able to track certain vocal types isn't always my strong suit. So I will say bit of confusion there at first. However, yes, it's so good in there.
And it's also not very important to this moment that you know who's singing that. The message is the message, not it's not incredibly influenced by who is saying it. So I think of all the times to have that confusion, this is not a bad one.
I would agree with that.
But now we get the next assassin coming in, and is the wonderful Sarah Jane Moore. I absolutely love Becky Ann Baker's characterization. It is just, again, you're getting the comic beats perfectly, but you're getting the rise and fall of the voice to reflect her panic over not being able to find her gun, and she's just so scattered. It's so good.
The rise and fall on not finding the gun, and then the immediate pivot when you find a shoe. And the shoe was too. She is so good in this. Like, I forget about the writing at this point, and I'm just enamored with her, and I can tell what she's doing on the stage.
The gun, even if you fail it, tells them who you are, where you stand. This one was on sale. No, not the shoe. Well, actually, the shoe was too. No, that's not it. Shit, I had it here. Got it. Yeah, there it is.
And all you have to do is crook your little finger, hook your little finger out.
Shit, I shot it.
Yeah, this is one of those examples for me of where to get to the highest level of performance, the writing has to have vulnerability, because a lot of what Sondheim is known for is creating very actable songs. But that means that it's not always going to be all there on the page. He is giving you all of these supports, but then you as the actor have to take it and bring it to life. And so then when you have a recording like, to some degree, the original off-Broadway cast, it feels a little bit flat because the line itself, if you just read it straight, is not funny. It's not informative. It's not anything. But when you have somebody who understands, oh, this was made to give me a moment to ham it up and be amazing, it soars.
Sondheim is a composer that actors love because he gives them the framework that they need to excel, even if they're not a great singer. And he is a composer that singers love because the lyrics are wonderful, and the way that a bigger song, a larger ballad, something like that is structured, gives them something that they can sink their teeth into real hard. And so he offers something that's great for both. What is always sad is when you have someone who wants to do it because they know that it's good, but they're not at that level.
So as we're going in, we get a quartet of the four of them singing together. I will still maintain that it is not a barbershop quartet, despite what Sondheim said that it is.
Agreed.
But it's beautiful. We're kind of going back to that semi-serious bit with all you have to do is move your little finger. And then to have the comic out of nowhere, shit, I shot it, is not staying in any one mood too long. And one, it's engaging to keep that changing around. But it's also still, like I said before, very unsettling to an audience. And you never know how to feel at any one moment because you don't know what's coming.
And I feel like there were changes in how some of the harmonies were laid out in this album, or how they were voiced compared to some of the others. I don't know that for sure, but I know in listening to a few of the other albums in kind of rapid succession, there are different lines that get pulled out more in some albums versus the others.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that this one's my favorite in the end from those tight harmonies, but it is very good.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I did not see who the vocal arranger was for this. I did not see it credited anywhere that I was looking. So we don't know who to blame or praise.
100% fair. Getting back to your last point, though, the tonal whiplash of what is happening, I think, is great. From just a listener standpoint, from a cast album perspective, it keeps you on the edge of your seat, and so you're engaged. And as a audience member, the four of them gives you an opportunity to look into the eyes of each of them and choose who you want to follow.
Yeah, absolutely. So on this album, we now have a seamless transition into the Ballad of Czolgosz, where the last note that Czolgosz sings becomes the new key for the next song. And it drives me crazy that this is the only album that does it that way, because this is the first one I heard, and I assumed that every other album was like that because it's so perfect. And then the fact that it's not, and that on the original off-Broadway cast album, this is one track, the gun song into the Ballad of Czolgosz. It makes even less sense for it to be one track if they're not in the same, that nice, they're not in the same key, but that beautiful transition isn't there. I don't get it.
Girl, same.
It makes me angry.
It makes no sense that this is a thing that they did right. And I will second everything that you have to say on that front. The blend from how we are being introduced to Czolgosz into the story of what he wound up doing when he got the gun, the blending of those two together over that single note makes perfect sense and should be how
it makes
it's
dramatic
done.
sense. It's musical sense, dramatic sense. Everything is perfect about it.
It's richer, but a gun claims many men before it's done. Just one more.
Okay, so now that we get into the Ballad of Czolgosz, we have another folksy number. We didn't really talk about that so much with the Ballad of Booth, but the numbers that are labeled as ballads do feature the balladeer and are a somewhat generic pastiche of folk music, kind of combining different types of folk music into a general vibe.
Yeah, the plucked string vibe.
Yeah.
Which works. Like it's a very good, quick, easy shorthand. And this is Neil's first kind of big song, with the exception of his interstitials with Michael in
I would say that for the most part, the Ballad of Booth is more the balladier's song than Booth slightly. I think he sings a little bit more. A lot of Booth's time in that track
singing, it's the
book
acting.
scenes.
Yeah.
But this is, the entire song is sung by the balladeer. So we do get a more uninterrupted performance from Neil, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
He is going along. There's a lot of great wordplay in here, really leaning into the folksiness of the time. This is turn of the century, time's wasting, it's 1901.
And I will say I haven't talked about this yet for any of the others, but I love the tempo in this. It is faster than most of the other recordings that I've heard, and it keeps that, like, I can see this as a quasi folk dance, or like it's something that's going to keep you engaged, because if it's slower, folk music can tend to make you just kind of fall out of it and be like, oh yeah, this is nice and chill, and I'm gonna like
Yeah,
lay back and
it's
take a
good
nap.
background music.
And this being faster is going to force you into it, and I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, and then obviously we may both be biased because this was the tempo that we first learned this song. But even as I tried to look at it objectively, I agree it works better faster because otherwise it just, I don't know if it's partly because, especially in the newer recording, the actor might have in mind this tempo, but is being directed at this tempo. So it always kind of feels slightly off kilter to me a little bit. Or maybe that's all in my head.
There's a lot of things in your head, but yeah, this is a great, this is a very good number as a whole. The lyrics in it are quite good. There's, I think you were going to bring up one that
Yeah.
is,
So there are a few times in this song where in every other version of this cast album, they use a very folksy shorthand of a phrase that does not use all the words. And so in the first verse, it's saw of a sudden how things were run. But Neil does saw all of a sudden in the same time and at a faster tempo. And I don't understand why he does that because one, it just sounds awkward to try to rush all those words in, but he doesn't do that for the other versions of that where they omit words to make it more folksy. And so it just doesn't make sense to me as an acting choice or a characterization. I don't know. But I love, so one of my favorite things in musical theater is when lyrics or whole songs are repeated or reprised with different context, slightly different tweak of the lyric so that it has a new meaning. I just think that is one of the wonderful things of the art form. And we get a little bit of a version of that in this where we have the talking about, you know, how capitalism is not as great as people are saying it is. And so we first have some men have everything and some have none, but that's just fine. And then as we get more into Czolgosz's not so happy about capitalism not working for everybody, that's by design, as in it's meant to keep people down and keep the rich up. And I appreciate that we are getting kind of a full character arc in this relatively short song, showing his semi-radicalization.
and building off of Emma Goldman's statements from earlier.
Yeah.
Again, less so in this album because it's so short and you don't necessarily know what the tie-in is, but in the show as a whole, the tie between those two is wonderful.
Yeah, this song also gives us the next shining moment for our ensemble, as we are hearing different people in line to meet McKinley saying things that are different kinds of oblivious, talking about things that they've heard about him, and then the best line delivery.
Do you know what his favorite dish is? It was in the papers. Beef!
And again, every other cast album, sure, they're fine, but they just can't top this one. It is so good.
Again, there were talks at various points in time of like Tony Awards for ensemble. This is the perfect example of why that should exist.
Yeah, and maybe someday we'll get it, but not yet.
And definitely not in 2004.
Definitely not. The one line, another line, this is not a lyric of Sondheim's. It is a lyric, but it's a true quote that he pulled from Emma Goldman. The idea wasn't mine alone, but mine, which is, I think, a very elegant and succinct way of saying, you know, I believe in this fully, but I can't take credit because it's a movement. And so bringing that in, which it was in the book scene earlier, so it is clearly a reference in this song.
She had an idea, or I should say, a person ends up having an idea and they choose to build it and understand it how it works in their head. However, it is informed by all of the other people in the movement or all of the people in society who are also contributing to that discussion. And so it's an idea that is hers or that is his.
Yeah. And then I think this is a good example of not every cast album includes the gunshot at the end of the song when he literally works his way to the head of the line. And I think it is very helpful. One, it's just entertaining to have the gunshot and then the carnival bell, but then it just drives home what's actually happening on stage through the cast album, rather than you can make the connection of what's probably happening, but having that solid sound effect to pull you in is very helpful, I think.
The head of the line. To the head of the line.
I very much agree, especially since the assassin that we had right before this did not succeed. And so you're seeing kind of there's a reward feedback loop of here's when someone has been successful, here's when they haven't. And like that little bit of dynamic of I'm willing to wager. I'm not going to like assume things about the theater going populist broadly, but I bet most people wouldn't be able to tell you which President McKinley was or who killed him or when he was president. And so giving those extra clues and context, I think is helpful.
Yeah. To play off of that, also skipping ahead to the end of the next song, Unworthy of Your Love, on this recording, when Hinckley shoots at Reagan, we get the gunshot and then the buzzer to indicate that he missed, which is funny. And then you get the Reagan quip, and then another shot, and another buzzer, another quip.
He died so our love could live.
Sorry, Nancy. Looks like I forgot to duck. I sure hope that surgeon's a Republican. Where'd that kid learn to shoot? The Russian army? There you go again. There you go again. There you go again.
And so to your point of it's giving us clues about success versus failure, I like that it's helping to guide us along that way. And it's an entertaining, funny way to, macabre but funny way to display that.
Yeah, and it goes back to the original song that we started with, which is "Come Here and Kill a President." Like it is the duck game that's happening.
Yeah, it's bringing it back to our framing device. So about Unworthy of Your Love, it is, as you said, one of the more commonly excerpted songs from the show. It is fun to have the two different characterizations of Hinckley and Fromm. I am a big fan of how Alexander Gemignani plays it. The other Hinkleys are good, but again, maybe it's just because this was my first one, but I connect the most with the character that is being communicated through his voice.
Yeah, I can very much hear a person who saw a beautiful actress, developed a parasocial relationship, determined that, yep, I am going to do what I need to in order for her to love me, and then just going to the extreme.
Yeah. I just think that the two of them, their voices are so beautiful together in the duet section. It is very generally pleasing to listen to, maybe more so if you're not paying attention to the words as much, but it's just beautiful.
I am unworthy of your love, Johnny darling. Let me prove worthy of your love. I'll find a way to earn your love. Wait and see. Then you will turn your love to me.
And the orchestration that goes with it is great, starting with the very simple lone acoustic guitar and then building into a bigger orchestration. It does not take you out of the vibe of the rest of the show. There's nothing that's taking you into a like different space chronologically from that liminal space that you started in. And so it still gives like that nice kind of folksy vibe, because I know some of the other productions go this is the 80s.
Yeah, the original orchestrations to me feel a little bit more, we're not that far removed from the 80s, so we totally understand that and we're going to give it to you, versus it's 2004, we're going to give you the impression of the 80s, and that is going to be a better fit with the rest of the show to still give you the idea and the feeling, but not be quite so literal.
It's a beautiful song.
It is.
It's something that I love to pull out at like a piano night, karaoke bar type thing, because it is relatively easy, but you need to have somebody else who's prepared to sing with you.
And I think there's less to talk about with it because it is written to be in the style of a pop song. So it is, a bit more simplistic to have that feel to it. And so it is very expertly done to match the assignment, but there's not a whole lot of nuance to break down about the song construction itself.
Yeah, and from like a lyric or intent perspective, in both of them, it's tying on one of the most common motivators that you'll have ever, which is some form of love, whether that be pining or passion or, the ennui of not getting someone. Like, it's something that everyone can relate to some degree. So, while beautiful, we can move on to the next one.
All right. So next we have another little mini book scene. I'm a terrifying and imposing figure. Dennis O'Hare, again, knocking it out of the park with his hilarious but menacing, especially when he is essentially trying to assault Sarah Jane Moore.
Guess who? Did I surprise you?
You scared me half to death.
I am a terrifying and imposing figure!
Yeah, it's a great kind of palate cleanser and space between the songs. Because to your point, at the end of Unworthy of Your Love, we had the roll into we're moving from our 80s space back to the liminal space of the carnival. We know that we're in the carnival, so we're having an interaction that wouldn't have happened in real life, but informing who our different characters are, and we're allowed to move on.
And we move on into the Ballad of Guiteau, possibly my favorite song. At least on this recording, it's possibly my favorite song because of Dennis O'Hare.
Yeah.
So we start off with the I'm Going to the Lordy bit, which is an actual poem that Guiteau wrote while awaiting his execution, and he read it aloud from the gallows with the instruction that somebody, or the recommendation that someone should set it to music for children to sing, because he was that deranged.
There's so many things to say about Guiteau in real life and Dennis O'Hare in the show, and this is it.
We could have a whole podcast episode about that.
Yeah, it's this song by itself is great because it does such a good job of going back and forth between Neil and Dennis on what the style and vibe is. It gives you a great character arc for Dennis in terms of like the slow build that he has until he realizes, nope, these are all the things that I've been, all of the things that I could be. And he's back into that gregarious, outspoken, fun-loving individual that we saw at the very, very beginning of the show before needing to climb the steps once again. And you've always got Neil there kind of goading him along and saying, here's what's going to happen next. Here's what's going to happen next.
Yeah, and again, another moment of you have to make more than what's on the page because it's there to give you an acting opportunity.
You've been a preacher.
Yes, I have!
You've been an author.
Yes, I have!
You've been a killer.
Yes, I have!
You could be an angel.
Yes, I could!
And to actually have that kind of a, oh, yeah, I guess I did do that, didn't I? Type of moment from Guiteau, it just, especially the original off-Broadway cast recording, that whole bit is so flat and it's just so boring. Like if you don't infuse any character into it, it's meant to be an acting opportunity, not, oh, let's just sing this song straight because it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
You have to know the difference and meet the moment.
It feels like an art song as opposed to a theater song.
Yeah. And when it's not written that way, it just is not going to sound good. Next up, we have an entirely monologue track. It is the full second monologue of Sam Bick, Have It Your Way. He has two big monologues in this show. The first, a tape recorded to Leonard Bernstein, and this one directly to Richard Nixon. And it is great writing that sounds like it could actually be what he wrote and said. It is not. It is written by John Weidman, but it is based on several sound clips that have survived that are available for people to listen to. I think at this point they're all compiled in one video on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
But it definitely maintains that vibe and that characterization, but makes it, again, more funny and menacing at the same time.
I just have to say, put it in my veins. I love this so much, probably in part because this is a role that I would love to play and I would never be appropriate for and I would never be successful at it, but it's so well done. The peaks and valleys that he has in this monologue are absolutely wonderful.
This might be a little shady, but I think it's clear that Mario Cantone was not cast for his singing, so it makes sense that he would be amazing at this monologue.
I mean, Sam Bick isn't a singing role. He's got a little bit in, 2 numbers from now?
And even that, they minimized it and gave part of his solos to other people for this recording.
Which is fine.
Which is fine.
Because, again, this doesn't need to be a role for a singer. You need a good actor who will kill it, and he does.
And he does.
Yeah, I know. Sam, don't say it. You're my main man. Guys like you're the backbone of the nation. Sammy, shut up, Dick! I'm talking now, all right? I'm talking, and you're listening.
The first time that I listened to this, as I said, I had just bought the album, was driving back home, and so this was on in the car while I was driving down the freeway. And the end of the song is cars and a plane with like horns blaring and everything. I had no idea what was coming. And so I nearly drove off the road because I was convinced that like I had missed something and wasn't paying attention to what was actually happening. The sound design is great when you're listening to it.
But with good sound design, good design of the album, we go from that cacophony at the end of this monologue directly into the eeriness of the next song, which is another national anthem. It goes right into that. I think it's even supposed to be recorded and played slightly distorted so that it's even creepier from off stage. And
Okay.
or at least it's allowed to be. Maybe not supposed to be, but allowed to be. This is the moment of conflicting ideologies. Throughout the song, the balladeer is maintaining a positive attitude about how, yeah, things might not be perfect, but we can all work together and get through it and blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, all of the assassins are ganging up on him and talking about how that's all bullshit. We're getting screwed here. This dream is never going to happen, is it? And I love, you get the visual of poor little Neil Patrick Harris fighting all of these people surrounding him just by the way that they are communicating with each other.
Yeah, there's the way that it's written. And again, not having seen the show originally, you can see it's starting with Neil going to each of these individuals on stage before he eventually takes center stage, and then they all just surround him, and now he's getting beat down.
Yes. I think it is a great dramatic moment to contrast all of the themes that we've seen so far in the show and to really make them go up against each other and make us think about to what degree are both sides deluding themselves versus being realistic.
Yeah, it's a number that is very meaningful, and like playing this back to back with the opening number, I always think is kind of an interesting thing.
This is not a song that I would ever just listen to on its own personally, but it is so powerful in the context of listening through the whole show, which again, a lot of Sondheim plays like that because it is written not to be the next
done
pop
in
music.
isolation.
It is only as effective as it is in context, and I still appreciate it very much for that.
Yeah, I will listen to this occasionally by itself, but more often it is the monologue followed by this and those two, because just the bleed between them is wonderful.
It's the other national anthem saying, if you want to hear, it says
Bullshit.
It says never. It says sorry. Loud and clear. It says listen to the tune that keeps sounding in the distance on the outside, coming through the crowd. To the hearts that go on pounding, to the sound getting louder every year. Listen to the sound. Take a look around.
So after this, we have Take a Look, Lee, into what is usually referred to as family. So this is another book scene that we get. And it is, again, not completely the entire book scene. We do get that in the original off-Broadway production. It is literally the full scene. And while I appreciate having a record of that, from a cast album design perspective, it is not ideal, I think, to have the whole scene, because you get what you need from, I think, the bit that is part of this album.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that similar to The Ballad of Booth, the amount that is here is good for the album. There is a part of me that wishes I could listen to the entire thing just as a one-off, because I would be very curious on how they chose to, or how the different actors chose to inflect their voices throughout parts of it and how the interactions would be. But from an album standpoint, I'm not mad at it. I think that it's the right amount because, again, it gives you what you need for the story to continue.
Yeah. And in this production, the balladeer is played by the same actor as Lee Harvey Oswald. Neil Patrick Harris plays both roles. And I did not realize until relatively recently, when compiling things for the Sondheim database, sondheimdatabase.com, that was not a common thing until this point.
True. And I do enjoy a double casting. And I think also to a degree, there can be an argument that's made around the balladeer becoming Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah, the loss of innocence kind of mentality.
And, well, not just that, but also the balladeer, to a degree, has been our audience viewpoint character throughout a lot of the show, or the audience insert character.
And the narrator, etc. Yeah.
Yep. And so to have him also be Oswald, it gives you the opportunity for these are all things that were impacting him. They were all things that he was thinking about that ultimately drove him to do these things. And it's a nice way to think about what his psyche may have been. And on the flip side, it's a element where you're like, all right, are you just setting this up for like whoever it is that's in the audience that ends up being the next one? So again, it's that setting of unease on what the purpose of the story is, what it is that people are going to experience. And I think I like it. I can understand people who don't, but I think that it's effective.
Yeah. And I think this would have been the first time having that double cast if it had played in 2001. And then I don't know if they heard about it or what, but the first time it was actually done that way was at Berkshire in 2003, right before this Broadway production. And then it was kind of the standard for a little bit after that before it went back to being kind of hit or miss, whether it's double cast or not, for the last 10 years or so.
I envy you.
We're your family.
I admire you. I respect you.
Make us proud of you.
Family. Admire you.
Depending on you. Future family.
Listen to us. Waiting for you. Listen, boy. We're your family. Make us proud of you. For you are the future. We adore your family.
So after this, unlike in the original off-Broadway production, we go into a song called Something Just Broke. This was written at the request of Sam Mendes for the London production in 1992. And personally, I think it takes the show from being very good to being great because it emotionally ties it all together and lets the audience really have a moment of kind of catharsis to deal with what we've just been watching the whole time.
Yes, it takes the American people from being the caricatures that we've had through the last two songs that they were in before.
In major roles, I think 2 songs before.
And puts them in a place where now we're actually seeing their perspective, and you as the audience can shift from, okay, no, wait, I don't have to be Oswald. I can be these people. And I think that it helps the show get grounded and potentially knock off some of those people who are going to just drag on the show because it's too controversial. This gives, it's not intended to, but it gives a defense to that because it gives you a different feeling that you're able to latch onto, and it makes the audience real people and the American populace real people.
Yeah, I think it solidifies their intention from the beginning that this is all about how it affects us. And you could argue that that is clear enough in the original iteration. And, like I said, it's still a very good show without this song. But it does then make it more explicit, not fully explicit still, that you can't just view any of these events in isolation. You have to think about the whole historical context, the current context of that time period. These are real people being affected by actions. It is damaging to the entire country for this kind of a trauma to happen. Even if it's a president that you don't like, it is still an affront to your sense of security that your president could be killed.
And I thought,
The president's been shot.
you know what? There are presidents who aren't worth a lot.
I kept thinking,
There's the kind that gets elected then forgot.
Mr. Garfield,
Mr. Lincoln, he's a hack. Bill McKinley,
he's
he's a giant,
he's a joke.
Still, something just broke.
Yeah, it also, I think, ties back to the last song in a very good way where I think it's Sarah Jane who makes the comment that someone will leap from the Duomo holding a picture of your victim and cursing your name. And this is an opportunity for it not just to be a line, but for you to actually see it and see that reaction. And once again, this is why I love this ensemble, because this is such a good place for them to shine. And in some of the other productions, it doesn't come across as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we only have 2 true cast recordings of this song because it was not on the original. But yeah, it feels, I think the orchestration for the 2021 version, the whole tone of that production was more folksy and less like the original and this one. And so I think that folksy vibe does not lend itself to this song. And so you're starting from a place of the actors working against the music instead of with it. And so I agree that this is the most effective use of the song to communicate what it needs to communicate.
Yeah.
And then we have a reprise for the finale of Everybody's Got the Right. We don't have a whole lot. There's not really, I think, any lyrical differences from the first.
Don't.
There's some voicing differences. There's some changes in who sings what line, but not anything that's terribly substantial or obviously there's a point to be made by this voicing change or anything. I think it's just to give different opportunities to the actors. But then we end with a final gunshot that is sometimes staged as being at the audience, sometimes at the shooting gallery in the background. In this production, it was just up in the air. I think the 2017 Encores version had a child wandering on stage and finding a gun, picking it up, and accidentally shooting it. And that's how it, black out to end the show, which I appreciate what they're trying to do with that, but it's
not the same.
That's not the same show. You're trying to pull a different issue into this. A related issue, but a different issue.
Yeah, I think that this, as a number, works well. It's a good bookend because you also have all of the context that now has happened in between, and because it's coming off the heels of Something Just Broke, you have a possibility of the audience linking it to the American people again, of they also have the right to be happy. And so, I think that there's an opportunity there, but from a cast album standpoint, I would say that, yep, it's straightforward. It sounds good. The orchestrations are good. Vocal lines are good. And it works as a reprise of the original and a finale.
Yeah.
Free country means that you've got the choice.
Be a scholar, make $1.
Free country means that you get a voice.
Scream and holler.
Grab 'em by the collar.
Free country
Means you get to connect.
That's it.
Means the right to expect
that you'll have an effect, that you're gonna connect.
So then, any other general thoughts on this album or the show as a whole?
I would say for this particular album, I think broadly, the amount of book scenes is a good amount. I think that the tempo is one of my favorite things, because even seeing a couple of different productions of it, I saw one at Theatre La Teda here in Minneapolis, which was a absolutely wonderful production. The orchestrations were different, but the tempo was about this. And so I felt like we had constant movement and constant forward momentum, which was wonderful. I saw a different production in the Twin Cities area that used a pre-recorded track, and because of that, they were very set on here's what the tempo is, and unfortunately that, I think, did some of the actors a disservice because it was just more difficult for them, and they weren't able to maintain the same energy that was needed. And that comparison is my way of saying I like this tempo. I like it being a little bit more up and energetic throughout the course of it. Outside of that, yeah, I think that this is, again, one of my favorite Sondheim shows, one of my favorite shows broadly. And so not too much that I don't think we've covered in the however long we've talked so far.
Yeah. One thing to bring up, since this is the only Broadway production of this show, I do want to pay attention to cut songs of albums. It is not featured on this album, but there are recordings out there of the Flag song, which was written and cut for the original production. It is...
Didn't it get used in a different show or like
The
an
melody was
adaptation?
reused in Roadshow.
Okay.
It's a nice little march kind of a melody. It is a very different tone from the rest of this show as it ended up. It is basically saying how patriotic a flag is, and you might start to think badly about the country, but then a flag goes by and it all seems good again. And I'm hoping that that would have had some irony about it, but I don't know.
I worry very much that, especially in the 2004 era, that it would have just come across as this is jingoistic paternalism during the War on Terror and not had any level of irony. And so I'm not a fan.
I mean, there's really no time that it wouldn't have done that, because the show famously, its first two major New York productions were during Gulf Wars.
Underneath of a bush.
The Gulf War under Bush Sr., and then the Iraq War in the mid-2000s. So yeah, that might have also been part of it, is that maybe it was written before that war started in in 90, and then they were like, yeah, this is not gonna play the way it would have before this, and so maybe that's why they cut it. But I do think it's a fun song on its own. It's just a very contradictory message to the rest of what Assassins currently is.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that that can be the case with any cut song. When you're going through and writing things, I am not Stephen Sondheim, but I did go to school for theory and composition, and so I have spent time writing various things. And there are times when you're putting something together and you're like, yep, I have this great idea. I've written this song. It's wonderful. You write the rest of the things, then you realize what you started with just doesn't fit anymore. And you can try and go one of two paths. Either A, cram it in there and it's going to degrade the quality of everything, or say, unfortunately, I have to go with where the majority of things work, and maybe I'll keep this for something else. Maybe it'll be in a different show or just a fun little thing. But I think the right choice was made.
Yeah. All right, now is the part of the show where we give a grade to the album. So we will be reviewing various categories of things that I think make for a good cast album listening experience. Who knows, this may get modified for next season. If you have thoughts on it, definitely let me know. But we're going to start with this and see what we come up with. Sound good?
Sounds perfect.
All right, so the first item is the music of the show. So we're going to separate out music and lyrics. Each one will be a score out of 15 points. So this is both how well constructed is the music, how effective is it in achieving its goals, how much do you just like it as a composition, separating out the performance element of it, but just the written part.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
You may.
Does this include orchestration or is that something else?
I would say not orchestration.
Okay. Just the music by itself, this is out of 15?
Yes.
Probably like a 12 or a 13. I think the music by itself is very good. Actually, no, I might go down to an 11, only because unfortunately, oftentimes Sondheim doesn't have that singable melody. And so there are a few songs in here that are very good on that front. But on the whole, I don't think that it does. So I'm going to say a 12.
Okay, we'll go with 12. Next up, lyrics out of 15.
13, 14. We've talked multiple times about all the little gems that are in this show, and it is something that will always make you think and always make you come back to it. And so it's near the top for me.
Yeah, I think the idea is to put this in the context of cast albums as a whole, not just looking at what you think this album could have been, should have been, or this music could have been, should have been, but in the setting of all musical theater as a kind of comparison. I think this is not the top of Sondheim, but
No.
the bottom of Sondheim is still better than most other people.
Yep, that's what I was going to say. There's stronger lyrics in Sondheim's repertoire, but there is also much weaker in the musical theater canon as a whole.
Okay, so taking into account the context of musical theater as a whole for the lyrics for this show.
Probably a 13 then. I think other Sondheim shows would move into the 14, 15 category, and a lot of other lyricists would be closer to the 10 to 12 category.
Okay. All right. Next up is the performance category as a whole. So we'll break this out into technical performance and vocal acting. So technical performance being the objective, good quality of a voice, the effective navigating of their range, diction, all that kind of stuff. And this is probably where I would put more of the orchestration with the pit performance, and that is very heavily influenced by the orchestration. So I think this would be, except for the acting bit, the listening experience enjoyability based on how good it is.
And this is out of 15.
So this is out of 15 as well.
Okay, 15. I am going to put this a little lower, to be honest, because we are looking specifically at vocal technique and orchestrations. I think that they are very good. However, there is a lot stronger technique on Broadway. And so I would probably put this closer to an 11 or a 12. I think that they do a very good job with their range. They modify their vowels where they need to. But from comparing this to all other albums that are out there, it's not going to be as high as I want to put it.
Okay, so what's your final number?
12.
12. All right. And then voice acting, out of 10, the effectiveness of getting the characterizations, the idea of the facial expressions, gestures, interactions between the characters, all of that through the voice alone.
10.
Out of 10 points.
10. I'm sorry. When I'm sitting in a spot and I can, even for the ensemble, who I wish I could name every single one of them, but that they are coming through in their acting technique and giving me everything I need to know that is happening on the stage, in addition to every one of the leads being able to do that. I don't know that I will be able to think of a better album.
Agreed. All right. And then next, we're going to get into storytelling. So how well does this album tell the story of the show? And we'll get to a separate bit in a second about how accurate that is to what the show really is. But does it paint a picture of a show?
It does not do a good job of telling me what the story is, sadly.
Although, to be fair, there's not a ton of actual story.
Yeah, here's how I'm going to approach it. Because each of the individual scenes has a story, and each of the individual assassins mostly has a story that they get in their own scene, I am going to grade it mostly on, I'm going to give it bonus points for that and a lower marks for not understanding what the purpose as a whole is.
Okay.
From like a front to back standpoint. So I think for the ability to tell a story in the individual songs, out of 15, this is probably like a 9. And for the story as a whole, like a 6. So that would drag it down to an 8, maybe.
An 8?
Yeah.
Okay. And then of what you get creating a story for yourself of this show from the album alone, how accurate is that story that you create for yourself out of 5 points?
Without having read the liner notes or anything?
Correct.
I'm going to say a 3 because the take a look-ly really frames everything back up. And like the first half of the show, no idea what's going on. Absolutely none. Once you get to take a look-ly and something just broke, okay, I can see what you're trying to say. But because it takes that long, I can't give it a high score.
And I think because you don't get a ton of idea of an overall story, sure, but the bits that you do get are accurate to what the show is trying to do for the most part. So kind of being right in the middle there with 3, I think makes sense. Because what you're getting is accurate, but you're just not getting enough of it to form an accurate overall picture.
Yeah.
So, okay, 3 sounds good. Audio quality. So for the year that this would have been recorded.
The year of our Lord, 2004.
Yes. How does the recording quality itself hold up? Are there issues that you would wish would be addressed? Things that could have been recorded better? We'll get to mix in a second as a separate part of that. But actual recording quality being enjoyable to listen to out of 10 points. I see this more as a, do you have deductions to take from a point max?
Yeah.
This is one where I would say,
don't think about other albums, just this one.
Think about the time context of, are there, because, you know, if you're listening to an album from 1965, there are concessions you're automatically going to make because of technology.
Yeah.
Are there things that you're like, no, this is inexcusable. This should not have been an issue based on the time that it was recorded?
No, I think that they made good use of everything they had, and there's nothing that pulls me out of it for the time period.
Yeah, I think this I mostly included because there are some albums out there that have egregious, it's painful to listen to because it was so lazily recorded.
Oh, fair.
And so in the setting of everything, I didn't want that to be able to go unnoticed. So it's more, most albums are going to have a high score on this unless they really mess something up. And then again, with the mix out of 10 points, a similar thing. Most albums are going to have a good mix. It is, are there moments that are not as clear, like you can't understand the words because of not having it mixed correctly, where you typically should be able to understand the words? Or like in this, the one that comes to mind is Zangara's last note not being as identifiable as it could have been. Things like that to bring a point down.
Yeah, because I don't know if their intention was to keep that note high and clear or if it was a directorial choice. I don't know that I can dock that specifically. I will advocate for a bump up because of the car and plane. And the fact that, again, if you're listening to this at relatively high volume in your car, you will have no idea that it's not actually happening to you.
All right, so out of 10, what do you want to give it?
I would probably keep it at a 10. I'm willing to go down to a 9 if you're...
We can keep it at 10.
To.
That's fine. Okay. I'll take your extra credit to make up for the point I would have taken off.
Perfect.
And then the last little bit that's not honestly that important, but I don't think can be fully discounted, the album artwork out of 5 points. Is it representing the album to get you an idea of if you would like it or not? is it enticing you to want to listen to the album, or is it just kind of like, oh, let's just slap something on there?
Out of 5,
Yeah.
it's a 2 or a 3. It's not wildly indicative of what's going on, or I should say of what the plot of the show is. I think that there is some leeway that I'm willing to give for the time period, because I think that it was kind of stylized for 2004. And so, like, looking at it in the era, yeah, I can see this.
Yeah, but we are approaching this from our current selves,
Okay.
because that could get very tricky of what would I have liked back in whatever time period.
Fair. Yeah, let's not go into any of the codes of the era. Nope. So from a 2004 perspective and a today perspective, I don't like the color. I don't necessarily get carnival, but I do get like the idea of this is an event type thing. I appreciate
The shadowy person makes no sense to me.
No, I do appreciate the shadowy person, actually, because it is the idea that everyone's got the right to be happy and that you are putting yourself in the role of that assassin. So it could be anyone who's going on that journey. Again, I'm going to put it at
All
like
right.
a 2 to 3.
Pick one.
2.
2. All right. So that brings us to a total score of 80 out of 100.
All right, that's like a solid B.
B minus, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't want to think about it that way, because I want there to be actual spread between albums, not everybody clumped near the top.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to turn this into a letter grade situation.
Oh, no. But like I'm just saying I'm happy with this being a 80. There's a lot of really good on it, and the stuff that is less good doesn't drag it down horribly.
And to be clear, for anybody who may be yelling at their podcast right now about how I've decided to approach this, my thought about this is not every show can have a great cast album. A lot of amazing theater is going to be impossible to convey in a cast album format. That's not what this is about. It's not, could they have done better? It's, as someone who grew up only having the cast albums and having nothing else to get to know the show, how well is it doing at bringing you into that world of, I want to see this show, I want to know it better. It's more from that perspective, not could they have done better, but for what it is, maybe what it has to be, how does it compare to others who have the same goal, but very different starting points of how they're going to get there. Some will just be more advantaged and others very disadvantaged, and that is kind of just is what it is.
Yeah, there's an element of adaptation paradox here. When something is written for the stage, it is a live format with visuals and audio and whatever your tactile experience is while you're in the theater. When you're listening to a cast album, you don't have any visuals outside of the album art, which is oftentimes very limited, and it is difficult to try and convey what it is that's happening on that stage just into your ears.
Yeah.
But this is also a great way to highlight the fact that cast albums are a great way to get into theater and find songs that you love, find shows that you enjoy. And then this is a plug also to any regional theater. Do the weird art. Pick up weird shows, give people an opportunity to see stuff that's not always done. Because growing up in Minnesota for me and Ohio for you, like, I didn't get to Broadway until very recently.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this is going to be a fun podcast.
Yeah.
Josh, if you would like people to reach out to you or stay in touch with you, how would you like them to do so?
There are 2 venues that you can get a hold of me at. Both of them are under my drag persona of Ovary Analytica. So you can find me at ovary.analytica on Instagram or Ovary Analytica on Blue Sky.
Well, Josh, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and I'm sure you will be back again in the future.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to The Little Things You Hear Together and bearing with me through the audio issues. You can find me on Instagram at Little Things You Hear Together, and you can also email littlethingsyouheartogether@gmail.com. The podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts, so please like and subscribe so you don't miss any of the fun. Join me next week when we'll be talking about the 2002 original London cast album of Bombay Dreams. That's right, we're mixing it up a little and with a very special guest. Until then, get on up in your rings and fancy silks.
Everybody's got the right to their dreams.